Try to keep this out. People that didn't understand. We're good? All right, we're going to call the Wednesday, June 2nd, 2020 Board of Education meeting back to order. Everyone please silence your electronic devices and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know in person. Okay. Additions and deletions to the agenda since Friday mailing, we have none. I need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the May 19th, 2020 BOE meeting. Mr. Hislop, Mrs. Burns, all in favor? Aye. We have a special presentation for the CARES Act, which we will start with and turn it over to Joanne.
And Fred. If you just adjust your chair,
okay.
You can see the presentation behind you. And I will try and lower those lights so you're not looking directly at me.
We'll try to go through this quickly. So Joanne and I just wanted to talk a little bit, and we'll give updates along the way regarding grants through CARES, which we have talked about in the past, but then also other COVID-related grants that are coming down the pike that we're going to have to be mindful of.
And the first slide goes over what we know right now, that the CARES Act that we already approved, CARES Act 1, which was part of the 2021 school year, which was approximately $262,000. We applied for that, we were granted that. We have gotten some of that money yet, not all of it. And to give you an idea, that CARES 1 helped to offset the custodial fees, use of PPE, some material and supplies, technology, Chromebooks.
As part of this, we had to, if you remember, we had to collaborate, just like title funds, we had to collaborate with private schools and out-of-placement schools. We did have 2 schools participate. In the future for this new funds, we do not have to do that. They have their own allocated funds.
So any private school in our district that wanted some of the funds, we had to give it to them if they wanted it. And Mr. Engelhardt did the work with that. He reached out to them. Again, in all the CARES Act for 2 and 3, they all have their own pool of money, but we'll go through that as well. Am I again? Oh, I'm up again. We just want to talk about the fact that if we don't spend all the money, there is the Tidings Amendment, which means that if we didn't spend it all, we didn't do the FS10, and we spent the entire $262,000, then it just means that we could still carry it over and then obligate it into the 21-22 school year. That happens with the grants that we have right now, just so you all know that. Just wanted to point that out.
Ooh.
Oh, look at that. Is this me again, Fred?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, I got more slides than Fred has. And then we wanted to talk about what has been approved for the 21-22 school year. There's and all these acronyms, so I'm going to apologize. There's, however you want to say it, the CRSA Act, which is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act. There's the ARP Act, which is the American Rescue Plan. But to put it in perspective, it's 1.63 in the CARES Act, and there's million, and 2.8 million in the ARP funds. I want to just let you know that there's some stipulations. We'll go on through that. But again, that's a big pool of money that's going to go through the special aid fund. It is not part of the general fund, not what the voters just budget on. This is all in addition to.
So these are some of the stipulations. If you look at what percentages we have to set aside. So that's summer support and after school programming. But you'll see the percentages that have to address learning loss. So we are already in conversations and discussing that. We'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to prioritize that a little more detailed in just a couple of slides.
Sources of funds, again, just to give you an idea, it's 2 sources of funds, some federal and state grants. There is some detailed accounting requirements for these funds, whether it be the application process, administering when we apply. We use detailed federal grant forms. We have to do a narrative. It has to be as we apply for the money, how we spent the money, we have to support it. And one of the things that it's going to make it difficult. We have to account for everything separately. So we've already started to do that with the CARES 1, but again, it's kind of housed a little bit differently in the general fund. All of these funds will be recorded in the special aid fund, and there's FS10 forms when you apply for the budget, FS25 to get the money as you spend it. There's amendment forms, and the states fully expect to get a lot of amendments because all the public schools have to put up applications for these funds. We got to get it done. We got to get it done in short order. And they're not going to tell us that that's how we have to do it. They will allow us to amend it. They fully expect a lot of amendments as we spend the money. It's going to be like a work in progress, but it's definitely a lot of reporting requirements. And I'm happy to report it's not just financially, it's also instructionally. So Mr. Engelhardt will too have a long list of requiring and reporting requirements.
So our priorities really start with getting kids back in school in person. That's safely to make sure that we are, and again, we don't have any mandate from New York State around a remote option, but our funding really has to be to getting students back in person, and I think everyone would agree. And then as they come back, we need to do assessments. We are doing assessments now for those who are in person, but additional assessments around learning loss, social emotional supports. We know students will probably come back with mental health needs. We also know they're resilient. So, we're hoping that some of the data will be surprising. We're going to then, utilize programming we have, and we'll talk a little bit about summer school programming. We are planning on summer school for this summer. As part of CARES Act funds, we are going to provide transportation for that as well, which we haven't done in the past. And we've already gotten feedback from some of our students that they are looking forward to in-person summer school, which is, most kids wouldn't say that, but I think they understand as well the importance of all of that.
And then we're also looking, as we focus on spending this money, there's a requirement that we have to set aside of the ARP money, the American Recovery Act money, that 1% of that has to go to after school, 1% has to go to summer school, but again, that's the minimum. We're also looking at ways that we can spend this money and not have the legacy costs, which means if we decide to hire $4 million worth of staffing, when it's over, we're going to have all of that staffing to go on in the future, and it becomes a very expensive proposal. What the things that we're looking at are things, and again, there's a 27-page document on what we might be able to spend this money on, but we're looking at those things that could increase safety, security, whether it be doors, touch-free door systems, air handling units, rooftop units, things that can be the one-time things that we can pay for with this money, as well as, mind you, that's after we address the loss in learning. Then what's left of that money, what can we spend that we can make the most of right now and reduces the legacy cost, so it's not all staffing. That's what we want to be careful of, and it's going to be a lot of planning as we go through this.
So this is our timeline, tentative timeline. We are going to go right ahead and ask for an extension on this, which you can, and a lot of districts are going to do that. I think because there are unknowns, we also want to get feedback and elicit feedback from some of our shared decision-making committees. So we're looking at bringing this to our district leadership team on the 17th, getting feedback from building leadership teams, our curriculum content specialists, our building leaders as well. We want to have it completed, not submitted, but completed by July 1st, so that way we can bring it to the board for a final review on the 7th. And then there was something else with that.
No.
I forgot. Okay.
I think what's important to note that right now there's a two-part initial application. One is that we have to go in and complete what the state is calling assurances, where we have to assure the state of New York that we will commit to all of the guidelines that go with how we spend our money right now today in federal funds and regular funds, and that we have to say yes to all of these things, that we'll report on the data that created how we identified the students that needed instruction. All of those things were assurances. We've done that. That was simple. It actually was literally saying yes to everything. If you said no to anything, you would not have been approved. The second piece of it is the initial application, which right now is due June 15th. And the state has already said you can apply for an extension. That is our goal. Apply for an extension now prior to June 15th. And we are thinking between Dr. Bailey, Mr. Engelhardt, and myself, that we would go out to July 15th, which means that we'd have time to reach out to the leadership teams that Mr. Engelhardt just spoke to, as well as address it to the Board of Education early in July.
So in addition to getting the feedback, we recognize there's still unknowns. One of the reasons why we want to extend, we have schools who are finishing up assessments right now, but we also know that teachers up until the last day are pushing students to pass courses. So we'll have a better idea around numbers in the next couple of weeks. The other thing that's huge is whether or not New York State's going to mandate a remote option. You know, we have neighboring states that have already said they're not going to, so we're hoping that New York State will do the same, but we don't know. And I think if New York State says we have to do a remote option, we've talked about this at our last board meeting, we're being proactive, we've talking to BOCES, talking to other school districts about doing some sort of consortium, talking about the possibility of if we have to do it in-house, what that looks like, using CARES Act money for that if we need to. And, you know, we want to make sure that there's some sort of solidarity around programming going forward, that there's consistency, that we really think strategically about the effectiveness of programming. Do we need to hire additional staff members? What does that look like? What is going to be the roles and responsibilities of that? How are we going to measure along the way? We have a lot of measurement systems in place, but is it going to have to look differently based on the accountability measures that New York State's going to ask us? So a lot of unknowns around that. I had to ask Joanne what requirements for the maintenance of effort meant.
In the maintenance of effort, we have a lot of requirements right there on our grant funds, which means that how are we going to support the money that they're giving us? Mind you, it's not going to be that we're going to have to support $4.5 million. However, what are we going to do to support our maintenance of effort to continue with the improvements in what we've done? And right now, as far as the maintenance of efforts go, there's not a lot of guidance yet. They're coming out with it now. It's been one webinar, one document after another from the state. So we're waiting to get more guidance on exactly what the maintenance of effort requirements are going to be. We don't know yet.
Is that usually aligned with not supplanting previous programs, so that once this is pulled, there's a gap from where you were before the response effort, correct?
Yes, correct. That is correct. And we have that supplement conversation all the time, and that's what it's driven around. They don't want to give us this money, and then when it goes, all our kids either revert back and have a loss of instruction, or we manage it.
Any questions around that? That was it. I didn't put a question slide, sorry.
Are there any restrictions?
Oh, well, there are some restrictions, Tina.
Like
and some of
capital
that's
projects type things?
But we're allowed to do infrastructure things. We are allowed to do improvemements to buildings. We're allowed to do infrastructure. I'll share the document with the board when I get back to the office. I think right now it's a very thick document on the questions and what we can spend it on. And yes, we can spend it on things like that, but
Does it have to be justified upon response to COVID? You know, it's not just that we want to upgrade
correct.
something.
You would want it
it's-
to align to COVID and all of those things, yes.
The board on, what, July 15th or so, I think is what is that going to entail? You're going to try to come up with how you're going to spend $4.5 million in 30 days?
And now you can see why everybody's asking for an extension. It's hard to come up with a plan to spend that much money in a short order, but I think, and again, a lot of the questions, I don't know if Dr. Bailey wants to jump in, many of the districts don't know how their plan's going to look right now. There's been some talk that we could take the plan that we already put out to the public and just tweak that. It's really kind of crazy what the requirements are. We don't know what our plan is going to look like yet, if it's all going to be in a narrative form, if it's all going to be on numbers. I don't know if Dr. Bailey, you have anything you want to add to that or not?
So we meet as superintendents at least once a week, and this is overwhelming responsibility for every one of them. And for districts large and small, none of them have been able to say, oh, here we go, we know exactly what we're going to do. So we are trying to remain kind of in concert as we're developing these plans. Joanne is talking to her business manager colleagues, and Fred with his assistant superintendents. But what we will see is you will see some very broad stroke plans that, if Joanne didn't use the word while I was out of the room or at the back, they'll have flexibility built in. They have to be adaptable as we move ahead. So nothing that we do in 30 days is going to be in concrete, and we're going to continue to change it, and we do that through FS10s, which are a budget request form. And the other thing, and if I think Fred addressed part of it, is we just don't know where the children are right now.
Yeah.
Building any plan that's intended to catch them all.
That's what I didn't understand. So the money is being given to remediate learning gaps
Yep.
that has occurred within COVID. You don't know where those learning gaps necessarily are right now without actually being able to sit down,
Right.
digest this with the teachers and figure out exactly, what worked, what didn't work, where do they feel the gaps are, is it specific subjects, is it specific grades, all of that, and then you have to come up with a plan and have that submitted to us by July 15th. It just seems,
Yeah, quite honestly,
insane.
we believe that, we know we've got summer plans for remediation in each building right now. Some of them are new. Middle school and high school will be new in this form. And we are thinking it's very possible that we get to September, October, November, and we say, we unquestionably need another math remediation teacher. We need someone to help provide coaching for staff in this area. We think that we're going to be able to see those things all through the next 3 years in all actuality. And one thing that really provides liberty through this amazing amount of money is you can't just on a regular year say, hey, wouldn't it be great if I had someone who would take care of this really nagging problem? That money's not budgeted in a normal year. Now we actually have the funding to say, we've identified this problem, now we've got to move forward and go ahead and do that. We'd come to a board, we'd create a position with an end date, so that they wouldn't be probationary positions, there would be positions that would terminate with the end of the funding. But, it's exciting and daunting all at once.
yeah, it's 10% of our budget that should now be given.
It's an amazing amount of money,
Yeah.
agreed.
I've also reached out to the district's architect, so he can start to look at the building condition survey that they just completed to see which items on the building condition survey would be air filtration, HVAC items. So we're trying to identify that so we can compartmentalize the areas that we need, because it's not all for the gaps in instruction.
Maybe painting the vents would be part of that.
Yeah, and it's coming.
The vents, the vents?
Is anything with this, like we reach out to the community, for example, we had Wi-Fi issues that, that still aren't resolved. Is there any way that we can, just an idea, just to throw that out, if this, God forbid, ever happened again, is there infrastructure that can be put in?
That is one of the components, is to reach out to the community. I know Dr. Bailey has thought about another thought exchange or a survey that we can send home, that those things as well will help us identify where to spend the money. And to give you an idea, I was reading a document today that said that anybody that has, and again, it's going to change all the time, but they had given a deadline of January 15th, 22. If your money has not been, if you've not applied for it or put your application in, then you risk the thought of losing some of that. And that's why we'll have it done, and everybody will, but it gives you an idea of what the state, when they said you can get an extension, what they're thinking.
Yeah, I think definitely community involvement, starting with that, so that's something big.
And technology is part of this
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well, so we'll talk to.
Because I didn't know if that reached out, because it might not be something sitting right here, it might be,
It's any component of what we had to deal with as part of the coronavirus is money that are things that we can use this money for. And if that was technology, getting to Wi-Fi, expanding all those things are all part of it.
How far back can you go? Like, what's the starting point?
I don't know, that's a very good question,
So are
Tina,
there
I don't
things
know
we've
that.
already
Add that to
expended
our
that would be
unknown questions.
in those categories?
What did Joanne have to help me with the word, the unfunded expenses that we had in the spring, they keep using as an example, if we had transportation costs that were not funded, such as if we were paying drivers while they weren't driving their buses, but we wanted to keep them gainfully employed, that's the type of thing the money can be expended on. If we paid for food that wasn't for some reason reimbursed by the federal government, we can pay for that. There are things that we've already paid for back in 1920 that we can apply to this.
Yeah. And there's, and again, I hate to be a buzzkill, but there's also the FEMA money that you put in for some of the reimbursement for that. So they're not going to reimburse you for that and then give you this ARP money and other money. So all of those things are going to be very interested to see how they work out.
One of the funds, Joanne, I think the Gear Fund is actually, it was developed for districts that weren't getting a reward from other possible
Right.
funding streams. So they created this additional one that could go away, in all honesty, because,
Some of them
yeah,
could,
if we
yes.
find out that we're getting funds somewhere else, they'll take them away.
As far as the plan for July, I think the only thing I'd like to plant the seed in is that, although we want flexibility and we know there's a lot of unknowns, I'm hoping that we can avoid overly generic concepts. Like, I think that when we just see social emotional learning, that's a buzzword that has lost its meaning for us, as opposed to, these are some of the interventions that we think we can invest in to close that, or to address that. So you're not married to any one strategy, you're not committed to any one strategy, but a little more meat on the bone than just a heading would be helpful.
Yep. A lot more to come.
All right, we're good. We don't have any hearings and petitions, correct?
Not for the first one.
All right. I need a motion for business considerations.
Motion 6-1 through 6-17.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Hislop, do we have any discussion? 6-4, we would like to thank the A.W. Becker PTA for their donation of outdoor furniture for our water table.
What is a water table? I just don't, I know what my kid's water table is, and it's definitely not.
That's how high the water comes up in the ground.
So it's similar
You take
to
your
that.
sense?
Similar to that.
I understand.
Similar to that, but it's used specifically, this furniture, for gardening, like
Okay.
pre-K, kindergarten, gardening type of.
Right.
So I don't think it's one of the activity tables, if I remember right. I think it's more of a, gardening center type of thing. Good question. Maybe I'll try to take a picture.
I like pictures.
Okay.
yeah.
It'd be nice when it's right up to be on the
A
website.
thousand words, right?
Okay,
Do it, you can put it in
I will, yeah, that's a good idea.
6-11. Is the one you want to?
Yeah, can you just elaborate a little bit on 611, somebody? The surveillance 247?
Fixing the cameras?
the, you want me to, yeah, what we're doing is that's just, that's a contract for this surveillance company called Surveillance 24/7, and they're gonna, come on site, just like it's a preventive maintenance. They'll come in, they'll do the work on any camera that's broken and do any maintenance that's required.
How many buses are equipped with cameras right now?
Right now, we have unfortunately 14 broken cameras, and we're working on them as we speak.
They all have.
Every other one has got one though.
Everyone has one now.
Yes. 14 are broken. We're working on them.
But nobody knows which 14, so
I
we're
do,
okay.
but I just don't know, I don't know the bus number.
No,
Nobody out there knows which
No.
14.
Oh, no.
So as far as we know, they're all
Not
on and
Route
working.
3, if that's what you're thinking, Bray.
Are there specific instances that broke them, or is it wear and tear?
It's a
Wear and
tough,
tear.
it's a hard knock life riding around on the bus. They get a lot of wear and tear, very rough out there. On
Is
the-
there like a lifespan, a warranty on these? Are they only good for 3 to 5 years, or?
I think we have some that'll last the full life of the bus, and we have some that last a year or two. And yes, when we're leasing buses, I don't know whether the camera equipment is a component of the lease as far as the repair. We'll have to find that out, but it's hit or miss. It's just like consumer equipment. I buy something, it lasts a year, you buy it and it lasts your whole lifetime. It's a strange thing, but we're not going to tolerate them not working, and that's the biggest thing, because they've helped us in lots of pinches. It's very helpful to the drivers and to the dispatchers.
okay. Good, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion's passed.
Motion for 618. Can we do them both together, 18 and 19 still, or has it got to be
Both
separate?
separate, right?
Separate roll call.
It's a roll call for both, separately.
Okay, let's do
have
a
a
motion
second?
for 618.
Mr. Hislop? Any discussion?
I just want to thank them for their persistence. I mean, this was a hard-fought pilot that we've gone through, we found out the last minute. A lot of hard discussions were had, but at the end of the day, the district really benefited from this happening, both financially and I think, long-term, it's a good thing.
Ready for roll? Yep, ready for roll.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Engel?
Aye.
Mr. McFerrin.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill Burns. Aye. Mr. Reveley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hoteling.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Heislip.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. I need a motion for 619.
For 619.
Okay, second, Mr. Hislop. Any discussion? We'll go to roll call again.
Mr. Heislip.
Aye.
Mr. Engel.
Aye.
Mrs. Hoteling. Mr. McFerrin.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Reveley.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill Burns.
Okay, motion passes.
Keeping this on our
I
toes.
know, she's supposed to name order, keeping us all awake there. All right, I need a motion for one or all of the personnel considerations.
Make a motion for 7-1 through 7-20.
1 through
I think that's all of them.
20. That's all, okay, second. Mr. Hislop, any discussion?
I got a question.
Sure.
Within 717, there's the coaching recommendations. There's a position in the packet that we received that I'd never seen before, Pee Wee wrestling coach. What is that? So we have a varsity, a JV, and a modified, I think, coach, but we have something at the very bottom says Pee Wee wrestling coach. And we're paying a coach for it. Is that a youth sport?
I can tell you some history behind it. It was a standalone for many years where it was in the contract but not in the points for some reason. And one of our coaches was doing it. And I think that 4 or 5 years ago, we fought to migrate it into the points because it's a feeder program for the older kids. It's a little unusual, agreed.
So would we consider?
No, it's elementary school kids.
I don't believe they compete.
Would we
I'm not sure,
consider
though.
that for other sports?
I didn't hear Mr.
I just was saying, would we consider that for other sports? So if it's a feeder program for our sports wrestling program, and we're paying a coach for it, would we consider, like,
Why
this
wouldn't
is
we
the
do it for all the other sports? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't we do it for basketball or
Well,
football? or-
Because we're the coaches and we
There's no other
can't get paid 'cause we're on the
opportunity for any
board.
wrestling. Like there's baseball outside of school, there's softball outside,
Right.
maybe there's no wrestling outside.
We can find
They
out.
do this at Aero Park too, for that reason, because there's no other
Programs or,
in Aero Park, yeah.
We can find
I just
out.
know that.
And it was done as a club for years.
That's where it was, thank
That's
you.
where it was. It was done as a club for years, and it just migrated to the coaching side. I'll have to see if that should be
Did I
there.
actually catch it? Was it not there before? Was it not there before? I was dumb luck.
I think it was there last year,
Oh,
but
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's been since I've been here.
different coaches?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
instead of being a club, it's into
Right.
the
Yeah, and it's
coaching
been
package.
here since I've been here.
It's probably similar to
You're
like
not getting my
intramurals
point.
or.
Was it not on the paper before? Was it on the points paper? Was it not,
Oh, I don't
not
know.
listed before?
I don't know, you're
This is
asking,
the first time I've ever seen it. That's it's
Did
all
the
at the
word jump
bottom.
out, right?
We'll look at it and find out, Phil.
Okay.
that
So
would
if-
jump out.
If it was a club before, and now we're moving into a coaching with coaching points, is it the same, sorry, thank you. Is it the same requirements? Is it the same scrutiny as an interscholastic
Like
sporting?
you would have to have your certificates for coaching?
Yeah, like I'm just curious.
Look at kids, I would think.
We'll let you know.
I believe it's Mr. Chicano.
We've
I
done it for
figured
at least 10 years. We just moved it from clubs into the athletics because it was more appropriate, because it fit into the
Dumb luck.
athletic paradigm. I'll find out.
Is this setting a precedent for anybody who wants to introduce something that we don't already have?
Yeah.
Right, but
that doesn't
if
mean
it
that
wasn't a
next year-
sport and it was a club, then clubs come and go. Whereas I'm concerned that it now as a recognized sport, because that's what we're saying as a coach,
It's in the contract as a recognized sport.
I guess
It is.
it's not stopping somebody from opening up basketball club in the elementary school next year and us having to pay a coach to go teach basketball or any other sport or anything else. I guess is the big question, because really, you could do the same thing for any sport.
It is a negotiation point, though. We moved it as part of the agreement with the unit from a club over to
We gotta-
the points for athletics. because it was nonsensical for us to take something that was so uniquely athletic to have it continue to be in clubs.
I think my question would be along the lines, is it in the athletic budget? Do we carve out other pieces of the athletic budget for the Pee Wee program? Obviously, we have a coach associated with it. Those are the things that I would just be interested in, because this is the first time I'm seeing, and I'm not saying that it's not here or we didn't do it, but the first time I'm seeing something other than varsity, JV, or modified.
And coaching salaries change based on years that they've been doing it, where clubs are strictly by points.
Right, and
So
I
that
can
changes
tell
things,
you,
too.
we can double check it though, that it's still points for Pee Wee wrestling. Do you know what I mean? It's still, and that money is set aside in the club code. It's not in the athletic budget, it's in the club code.
So they're not a coach, they're a club advisor.
Yes.
It's different, then they shouldn't be on the coach's.
We'll look at it and make sure that we correct it.
Where I was going is, there is no fear of someone starting a club and then steamrolling into a elementary school football team. That's not what would happen.
Well, I was just wondering that, would it open us up to other people
Yeah.
petitioning and saying, hey, we would like to start this youth program that's outside of the scale of varsity, JV, modified, and we would like to be able to get in and have
Have the
access to
district pay the
facilities, district
Right.
pay for equipment, things like that.
Right.
That's basically what I was asking.
Okay.
And it's not a for-fee membership, like a private club would be, right?
What was the first thing you said? It's not
I said it's not a private, there's no fee for
Oh,
the
correct.
person to play.
4 feet. No,
Okay.
I like Pete's guess best.
That's why they did it at Eagle Park, 'cause that's why I asked.
Yeah.
I said, why do they have this? Why can't I start a?
Yeah.
And they said, well, there's other opportunities.
Because I remember way back when the pool first opened, I mean, literally the first year that it opened, that was a question that was presented about that club being recognized
As a
as,
club, sure.
right, and there was a separation of that because it was private and it was run privately and there was fees associated with it.
Sure.
So I just hope that we keep that.
You're gonna laugh, but I'm not against the opportunity. I'm actually all for
Yeah.
it. If I can open it up to other things, I would like to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
What's that?
Can it be retroactive?
What can be retroactive?
Those other ones you're gonna start.
Exactly,
All of those
yes.
schools we coach.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's passed. There's no informational items, special reports, and nothing to report. And I will turn it over to, or board members, anybody else have anything they want to talk about, bring up? I will turn it over to Dr. Bailey.
Congratulations to, I think we have 11 teachers and 2 district leaders who, building and district leaders who just have been approved for tenure, which they'll have sometime in the next 2 to 4 months when they hit their dates. Mr. Englehart included, Dr. Paterni included. Congratulations. When we come back in the fall, we will celebrate them hopefully together, as we usually do, because that's an appropriate time. It's pretty normal in a school district for people to hit that landmark on August 30th or September 1st. So once they've started their first day of school, many staff, that's when they receive their tenure for their first time. And we're very grateful to have them all. I'd sent out a communication to staff today, and we put something out on our website about a social media post that happened today. A student posted something that was very hate-filled surrounding LGBTQ, and it was bad. The only bright side out of it is we had 5 students who immediately sent it to building leadership and to us at the district office. One of the things that we struggled with, we had 2 other very noteworthy incidents this year, is a lot of bystanders who didn't take any action. So we're proud of the students who took a stand. And we know who the student is, so we'll be addressing that at the district level. It's building level. It's very disappointing, especially because This year, we've made a lot of special efforts in partnerships with the Anti-Defamation League, No Place for Hate, to try and spread more message to the students about what is right and wrong and what is harassing behavior and what is harmful. So even though, kids, they're not that smart around social media sometimes. This was on Snapchat. Snapchat's supposed to go away unless someone takes a picture of it, and that's exactly what happened. Our kids really need to learn that everything has the potential to be permanent. Nothing is temporary. Nothing on the internet is temporary. So we're continuing assemblies. There's actually an assembly this Friday, I know, at the high school level for kids. And we'll be working with leaders, staff, and students from this summer going into next year. Because we've done a lot of positive behavioral things in the past through PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. We've done things with No Place for Hate for years now, especially at the middle school. But we need to have a plan K-12 and make sure that all of our kids and all of our families and all of our staff are hearing the same message all the time, especially when you look what's going on in our national culture. It's a very charged environment. And our kids need the best possible chance to not get into amazingly significant trouble when they leave us, or do something now that never is erased, and follows them when they go out into the world and find their work. So disappointed about today. The only bright side is that students actually stepped up and chose to help us.
Brian, does our code of conduct address social media posts?
It does. It addresses it. When we talked about code of conduct, it talks a lot about all of the things that we would have expected in a code of conduct from 50 years ago, with some of the elements of like what happens at 2021 and 2031, electronic, digital, and the use of technology to do that. And any place where it doesn't speak to something about technology, because it's Snapchat today, but we don't know what it'll be tomorrow, we're able to apply the language from the code of conduct around harassment, bullying, discrimination, right? Using the language, even if it was a technology that didn't exist yet. Any other questions about that?
I understand that, first of all, did it happen on school grounds?
It did. It was
did.
very clearly
Okay.
in a classroom today, because you could see the ceiling of a classroom behind him.
Okay, that's my main concern, because I know that the school is still responsible for stuff that happens outside of here. I think it's absolutely absurd, but I know that they're pushing that back on schools to say, it doesn't matter when it happens or where it happens, if you know about it, you've got to deal with it. And I think that's crazy. I think that we need to push back on that and say, that's the parent's job. That's somebody else's job. We got to handle what's here. If it's on school devices, if it's on school time, if it's on school property, I understand it. But if it's outside of that, we really have to push back and say, that's not ours. Somebody else has to own that.
But Bray, if things like that don't get resolved, it comes into school.
I totally get it, but we cannot police the entire world. We need to teach. So anything that doesn't happen on school grounds, on school equipment, on school time, we need to push back and say, parents, what are you doing? And if that means turning it over to law enforcement and saying, this is a hate crime, you go deal with it, I think that's the way we need to go. Because otherwise, you're going to have your hands full, and we won't be able to do our job as educators.
I remember whenever Facebook came out, I would walk around all day, or MySpace, I would walk around all day as an assistant principal saying, I hate MySpace. Because I was in a high school and it was a daily problem. Where the state or where anybody would make a nexus to it is what Peter was describing, is if it has a direct effect on the processes in school, then it becomes us. The other two issues we had this year didn't happen on school grounds, didn't use school technology, didn't use school platform, but it very clearly affected our school
I get it,
communities.
but you're on a slippery slope to a point where you will not be able to do your job.
There's a lot of work, I agree.
But there's an element of protecting the student. I mean, even if you go back to when we were younger and it was a landline phone, if three girls got together on a Friday night and started making threatening phone calls to people or bullying them, that was still going to carry over to school. And there was still going to be some sort of reckoning about the behavior that put a student in some sort of situation that was intimidating, threatening, or dangerous. So I agree, I wish that there were compartments that we could put these things in, but ultimately, we're the connecting piece to these students and their safety.
But the school cannot be all-consuming. We've taken on everything already. We're already parenting, we're already feeding, we're already babying these kids. We have to be able to teach. You can't say we're going to keep holding them to higher standards and expect people to improve what they're doing with teaching and maintain doing everything else at the same time. We have to push back. We can't just say, okay, we'll do it, we'll do that too. Okay, and next time a kid gets hurt somewhere, it's okay, we're going to send our nurse out to take care of him. We can't do that. We have to maintain some kind of boundaries. Even if it's a losing battle, we have to continue to fight it. We have to say, you know what, parents, you're not doing your job. You know what, if it's a hate crime, law enforcement, you deal with it.
Unfortunately,
I understand when it
orientation-
comes
I mean-
over into the school, then you have to deal with the repercussions. But sometimes you have to be reactionary. You can't be proactive in all of this, or you'll be on your phone watching Snapchat all day long.
And I agree with you 100%. Logically, I agree with you. The problem is lawyers are involved. And the first time something reaches a dangerous level, and they say the district knew about it, they didn't do anything about it. That's where we end up holding our hands out, and as a district, we pay for it. We
I'm
pay
not
for
saying
one
don't do
way or another.
anything. I'm saying push back. I'm saying it's their job. Here it is, folks. Here it is. Parents' job. Here it is. Law enforcement's job. But we need to take a stand and say we cannot take on everything.
Well, one of the important steps that we're taking to try and combat this is some of these, there are some genuinely mean people out in the world. I think overwhelmingly it's people making stupid mistakes, talking out of naivete, and doing it in a platform that causes a lot more catastrophic damage than what they intended. Whether they meant to be mean or not, it causes widespread damage. It's our job to educate them to say, great, you feel that way? You can't do that. You can't publicly say it. You have your own opinions? Well, here are the boundaries by which you can express them in this country within the Constitution of the United States. That's our job. Occasionally, we do have to address it when they cross the boundaries, and if it affects our staff and students, we do go that route. But listen, and I got to say, we're adults. We are struggling to stay 1 minute, even behind the kids. They're so much faster than us at figuring out how to use these things effectively and defectively. We're playing catch up all the time. So it comes down to teaching what is good human civility and what we expect of you when you go out into the world. No matter what the platform, location, place, that's our best bet. And if we can't change people's minds, we have to make them stop saying it out loud. We prefer to change people's minds, but make sure that they're protected and the people around them are their civil rights are preserved. It is a huge responsibility, but look at this country this is a time when we need to be reminded of what made this country a place where people could live safely and free. So it does become an awesome responsibility on education. It will continue to be. They'll continue to be faster and stronger than us, I know that too. We'll catch up.
So we've talked about the code of conduct before. Is it effective enough in what we're dealing with, over the past year, as technology advances and students figure out different ways to hurt others?
Hurt is hurt, and it addresses that.
Right,
Yeah.
it does capture all that.
Just, I like Tina's analogy, picking up the phone and call. I used to say, if I wanted to insult someone, I had to go over to their house, have them open the door, and I'd say whatever I was going to say. Now people are, throwing it, any which way, no interpersonal interaction, just harming people all over the place. Harm is harm. If you're inflicting harm, the code of conduct covers that, no matter what the vehicle is that they're using.
And then I assume the code of conduct is applied based on you calling out specific people, you calling out specific nationalities, those types of things. Like, where's the line drawn with how the code of conduct is written and applied, right? So every single situation is a little differently. So how do we have consistency on how we apply that, so that way the student population understands, if I did this, this is the repercussions. If I did this the second time, or if I did just a piece of this, this is what it's going to look like. Because I think that's part of the problem, is that maybe the students don't quite understand, what it looks like until they do it, and then if they don't talk about it, or they just, they're expelled from school, maybe it doesn't get through the rest of the students to really understand that this is what happens, right? We always talk about discipline as adults, You know, if an adult gets in trouble, the other adults don't know what happened. It's all very top secret, it's quiet, it's hush-hush, you don't know. Maybe we don't want that with the student population. Maybe we
The
need-
adults are in dockets and blotters.
Right.
The kids, it's all private. That's the problem. You're exactly right.
Right, so we
Kids
need
don't
to
know.
make it, you know, maybe a little more formal versus informal, so that way they understand, you know?
One thing that came clear from, as we were trying to remediate what happened the other times this year, is ensuring that we've shared what the potential consequences are to the kids who haven't done anything wrong yet, to know what the damage, the impact would be on your own education if you perpetrate this, if you've broken the law or you've violated the code of conduct. That's a component of what we're sharing with them now.
Does that actually move the needle from awareness to consequence? So are you afforded that same, I didn't know better the first time if we've gone through those efforts?
I'm a huge advocate that if I just told you that this is not you did it by accident, if we just informed you and told you what the consequences are, that raises the stakes. There's no question.
Okay.
Anything else about that?
Yep.
Peter had talked about technological infrastructure, wireless infrastructure. State Tel just reached out to us a couple weeks ago, and as is true of most of our internet providers in the region, Verizon and the others as well, our legislators have really paid attention to what's happened through the pandemic. They've talked a lot about equity and access to wireless and to the internet. And, we're a year and a half after the beginning of the pandemic, just about. And of course, it takes that long for the people to get the message and to take action. But State Tel just reached out and asked us for a heat map for their region of where we believe those areas are that need the most improvement around wireless service and internet. And the other internet providers are doing the same thing. So we do hope that infrastructure will be improved on a more global basis. Right now, we're creating hotspots like outside of the library, hotspots outside of the bank, outside of our schools. That doesn't help someone who lives out in Coeymans Hollow or the Alcove, though. They have to drive all that way. So we're hoping that improves. And our legislators have been listening to that. We had our vaccination clinic, first one for our 12 and over folks 2 weeks ago, and we had 108 people participate. About 90 of them were our students, primarily from middle school. And then we had some staff members and parents and some community members who came in. So we've got our follow-up in 2 weeks, but we're very grateful we were able to do that.
Dr. Bailey, is that second shot here at our school?
And we'll be sending out a communication about that.
Just, I think the county sent an email that said they had to go to Voorheesville for the second shot, but I think it's here.
It's the pharmacy that is helping us, is partnered with us, is using a new platform for the registration process. And he said, I thought I'd be really smart and I'd create a template and I would send it out to everybody, and he sent ours to Voorheesville.
All right.
So
yeah, as long as we communicate that.
We will.
Make sure everybody knows.
It is
that.
here. It's from 10 to 12 on the, what's today?
12th?
Yeah, I believe it's the 12th. Thank you.
12th.
And that's the last one we're going to do. You can't walk around without bumping into a vaccination clinic now. We wanted to do it here, and you know what? The biggest reason, I had a family member walk in and say, I just want you to know, Bill was really nervous about getting a shot, but at least having it at school helped calm him a little bit about getting the shot rather than going to a pharmacy or to a grocery store or something. So, but I don't believe we'll have to do any more. There's lots of places and access for people to get them now.
Are you offering one like before graduation to get all the people
Yeah,
vaccinated?
graduation is my last thing, Bray. So it's June 2nd. We were really hoping that the state would have sent out updated guidance by today, and of course they're messing with us. But we do think it's going to happen in the next couple days, that the Department of Health will give us updated guidance around graduations. Right now, as a reminder, 100 or more inside. It doesn't matter whether you're in a stadium or in this room, 100 or more, you have to be vaccinated or be tested prior to entering. So we're going to be in the TU Center. We're going to have to do that. We think that they're going to update that in the next few days. It will be a huge relief. We've talked about equity and people's access to those tests. We figure on a given year, we probably have about 2,400 to 3,000 people come to our graduation on a good year, a big year. That that's a lot of people paying for going to the pharmacy or going to First Stop to get tested. So what I'd rather do is hold off on my nuclear solution to the problem until we're forced to do it. I do have another solution. You said, because families need equity. You know, I have enough money to pay for it. Maybe my neighbor doesn't have enough money to get tested to go. We have a nuclear option to try and help everybody. But I don't want to tell you what it is because it's going to require some planning.
Did you say we have 2,400 people come to a graduation?
Yeah, in a really good year.
Really?
Really good year.
That's like 15 people per graduate.
Well, when I started, we were graduating 185 in a class.
I think that's high, but I was just thinking.
Well, includes the band.
Huh? Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I know where we are, they're doing a testing the day of graduation just for seniors, if they have been vaccinated.
That's the minimum we're going to do.
Everybody else is on their own.
We had said we minimum would do that. That's a no-brainer. What I'm trying to determine is whether we're able to help our community in any way as well. It'll be a lot more onerous. It takes 15 minutes to do the test. In other words, 30 seconds to get tested, 15 minutes to wait for the test to develop. Everyone has to be vetted and they have to receive a printout. So it's not as easy as taking your temperature and walking by.
And you did announce the whole graduation thing already. We're not letting anything out of the bag here.
Yeah, graduation's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was there the other day. I went, did the whole tour.
Oh, good, yeah.
And you guys weren't there, couldn't get there or whatever. But the one thing they told us is there is a vaccination, not a vaccination clinic,
Right around
a
the
testing
corner.
clinic,
Yeah.
1 block away. They'll let them know when we're coming, so that anybody that shows up and is not tested or vaccinated, you can say, you got 15 minutes, you better run down to the thing. So-
I don't want to do it to families. I hope we don't have to do it. I know they're there, but.
Well, I'm assuming we don't have to do it, that they are taking care of all of that.
They are
just
doing
like they
all
are
that.
for us. So
Yes.
that takes the onus off us.
Yep.
It's their facility, we do what they say.
Yep.
Okay.
They'll be doing the bouncing. But I'm really sensitive. These are our families that they've trudged through 12 years or 13 years with us. I don't want anybody to get turned away.
But as long as they know ahead of time,
They do.
which
And-
they do,
Right.
then it's not our fault, you know?
So Dr. Bell, a quick question. You mentioned testing, and we see on, or I see on TV now, I can go to CVS and buy a
No.
test, and you won't accept that. Okay.
That one won't work. It has to be a test that's linked to the, I can't remember the name of the system. It's got to be linked to the state system. You need a printout that says you're not.
Well, I think it's,
What's the turnaround time right now up at Suny?
Of what, Tina?
What's the turnaround time to get tested at Suny? Is it within 2 or 3 days?
It is. It's very short right now. But what I'm worried about is everybody's graduating. So they'll go from very few tests. Like, look, we're turning in 10 positive cases a day now. 10 out of the total number being tested. It will go up by 100% or more than that when we have everybody trying to get tested at once. And I'm so worried that they go on Thursday thinking, I'm great, and they don't get it until Sunday. They got to change the rule, basically, because it's just so onerous on everybody.
Because you're also supposed to have the negative test within 72 hours.
6 hours.
6 hours for a rapid test.
Right, but at
rapid.
the state, if you go to state, it's 72?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so if you go on Wednesday, this week you can't, or Thursday, you take the chance making sure you're gonna have it back before
Right,
Saturday.
and we all know, we were at the center of this back in November, December last year,
Yeah.
or this past school year.
Oh.
You weren't getting a test back for a week sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
This is for, only for the non-vaccinated.
Right.
Correct, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to.
50% in the state. I know that not everybody is
Yeah.
from New York, but it's not everybody, and if you're announcing it in advance,
I just know a few seniors that are not vaccinated, that are graduating.
So they have to get the
they have to have the test.
we'll test those, yeah,
Because at this point, it's too late to get vaccinated.
Yes,
correct,
Yep.
in this window.
no,
They would have to
Johnson
give-
Johnson.
No, because you have to,
Yeah. 20 weeks.
Because you'd have 2 weeks.
right.
Only
Johnson
the,
Johnson's
only
not
the
approved for
Pfizer's
kids.
approved for below 18.
Right.
I
But,
thought they were applying for it.
yeah, the things are changing every day, you're right.
They're giving that Johnson & Johnson one in Coeymans Landing sometime soon, right? So it was on the news, maybe like this Saturday, if anybody wants it. I think it's on, don't quote me on the date we're talking about. Johnson.
I heard they're doing it down at the quarry.
No, I think it was at the landing.
Yeah.
It was on the news.
So we're going to send a a placemark communication to all families again about graduation and end-of-year events. A quick reminder, 100 or more means that everybody's got to be tested or vaccinated. Outside, I think the limit was 200?
500.
Depends on the size of the venue.
I know it's 500 for athletic events. 'Cause
Yeah,
we
we were
just opened
looking
it
at
up
just
completely,
today. So there's some caps on that as well. So there's really good reasons why we're not bringing the whole 8th grade class and their families together. We don't want to send 8th grade families through the same thing that we're talking about right now. But we'll send a placeholder communication out this week, and as soon as we get an update, we will blast it out all over the place. Everybody's watching, you know, all the schools are watching to see if they update this. And still, we're all wearing masks in schools. That's the last guidance from the Department of Health, and we believe they're going to keep that until June. And then they'll probably make some changes in preparation for the fall, which will be great. I think the athletes would definitely like to get the masks off their faces. I was watching cross-country runners. I was watching softball players yesterday. Unbelievable. I'm proud of what they're doing. I think of how strong they're going to be when they're done. But I would just assume that we move past this as quickly as we can.
Okay. All set. We'll turn it over to Mr. Engelhardt.
So I think the senior parade happened between our last board meeting and this meeting. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of the staff. I know the high school clerical staff had a huge part in that. So thank you to them, to Ms. Passman and Ms. Risco, who are the advisors, and all of the staff that came out. Deputy Patty was a big part of that as well. And then all of our local fire departments and police and all of those folks came out. So it was really great. It was a highlight of the year for sure. I wanted, as you know, we've been doing a lot around the seal of biliteracy, and one of our students, Celine Bader, she just completed all the requirements. So congratulations to her. As Dr. Bailey said, our middle school just received notification that this is the second year in the row that they got the No Place for Hate designation. Congratulations to Ms. Fisk and the middle school and high school science departments. Ms. Fisk is like a machine when it comes to getting grants for garden stuff. And she just got a grant for a pollinator garden for the middle school and high school. So, very cool. And then I mentioned last time that it is the infamous countdown alphabet at the elementary school. And so Mr. Lintner from Peter B. wanted me to let everyone know that they're turning it into a science project as well. So they're going to do paper mache volcanoes for the letter P and V, and do some explosives using baking soda and vinegar, not real explosives, at the kindergarten. So a lot of fun there. A.W. Becker raised over $1,800 for their American Heart Association for their Kids Heart Challenge and their PE classes. And they actually, as you know, they had a garden and are already eating lettuce from their garden.
Oh, right.
So, and are looking forward to having some salad as well. Not sure of the dressing. I'll let you know. And then lastly, I had to think differently without being on Google Meet. I've been highlighting our website. But if you want to, actually I would encourage anyone, if you could go to the 2021 recognition page, the class of 2021 recognition page, you'll see all of these awesome articles on our students. And if you grab a box of Kleenex and you want to read letters to the class of 2021 by some of our staff, I highly recommend it. It's just a really great way to celebrate our kids. So
That night, I noticed you can click on each one of our students and they have little comments and things.
There she is. Who is that? Yeah.
I was going through some of them the other day.
It's great. It's really
Yeah.
That end is much happier.
So Mr. Engelhardt mentioned you didn't know the concert schedule that's coming up, and we had talked about it with some of the board members. The only big event that's happening, I think, between now and our next meeting, non-concert related, is the senior night of the drive-in is on the 8th, I think. So they'll be at the Jericho.
And the prom.
And the prom, yep. But the concerts start tomorrow night, and in order to stay under that magic 100 number, the high school band and jazz ensemble are tomorrow night, and only senior parents will be able to be in attendance, similar to what we were doing with our senior athlete nights. Friday night is high school chorus and harmonic, same thing, senior parents will be in attendance. And our drama club started rehearsing in person for the first time tonight. They're doing all the same social distancing, and they'll be performing their plays. They have 2 plays, and they'll be filming it so they can share it with their families, because there was no way to get them into the theater to do it. So some of the normal things that we've been doing have continued to happen, just in some different ways. So we're very excited about that. We have an 8th grade concert on June 17th, but that'll be after our board meeting. And that's a completely virtual one, so it'll be live streamed. Okay.
Okay, you all set? We'll turn it over to Mrs. Moran for famous 30 seconds.
Okay, no worries. Just to give you an idea of some things that are going on in the business office, we're preparing for the first pay in July, and at the same time for the last pay in June. There are big days, unfortunately. The difference this year, we're going to split the first pay in July because the state Office of the State Comptroller and our auditors don't like us to prepay. So when we start July, if the first pay is scheduled to be on a 2nd, they consider that a prepay. So we're going to be splitting the first full pay into the 2nd and the 9th, and then we'll get on an every 2-week schedule thereafter. That corrects it for the following year. We won't have that. Probably happens every 5 or 6 years in schools. We're also at the same time preparing for the external audit. We're trying to get all that work done. They'll be in here at towards the end of the month to get ready for our audit. You approved 6.15 this evening. Just to give you an idea, the New York State Office of the State Comptroller or an Audit Services, somebody's looking at our corrective action plans, and then they're questioning it. This has really been happening a lot in the last year or so. To all the districts, I've spoken to other business officials where somebody at the state is now calling us, telling us that our corrective action plan needs us to do more work before they'll accept it. They actually reject it out, which kind of puts the process backwards, because we have the audit, we write the response, we meet with the audit committee approves it, we ask the board to approve it, then we submit it, and then 6 months later the state kicks it out. They don't like where I signed my name. They don't like that my dates weren't specific enough. So we had to go back and redo them again. It's a little bit of a headache. I really wish that they approved it first and then we brought it to the board. It just seems crazy, but we're still dealing with that. It's been the 3rd time this year. We are getting our new personnel assistant up to speed. It's the time of year when we're getting ready. Sue Starr has to get ready for the reorganizational meeting. We're welcoming Mr. Goodemote to be our new transportation director. He'll start with RCS on Monday, June 7th. I've also reached out to Rhinebeck. As you know, we're working on starting construction for phase 3 right at the end of June. And at the same time, we're working on the emergency project at Peter B. for the roof. And with that comes the borrowing. We have to borrow money for that, which we're doing. It'll be the last time we do a short-term borrowing on our capital project. That work starts now, in addition to good negotiations and everything else. It's just a busy time of year, actually, in the business office. That's it.
Great, thank you. New business, anybody have any new business to bring up? Good. Any of these old business items anybody want to discuss or have questions on?
I had a question about taking exams at home. Do we have a plan for that? You know, we have students that are taking finals in school. I don't even know if they're Regents, AP, whatever they are, and I believe the at-home version may be at a different time, maybe a different test, and I don't know how it's equitable.
Good question, Bill. I know that we've had conversations regarding final exams versus final projects, because final exams, especially with the potential of cheating, they wanted to make sure that it's authentic work. So I know departments are looking at final projects, which is the application of the knowledge. I did send out a survey regarding the question that I think Mr. Hislop brought up with the notes. We had 67 response, and we had a variety of teachers who talked about why they give notes, allow students to give notes. Some of them saying they know that students will probably Google answers and they'd rather allow them to use the correct information and make it more of an application. Others saying that they're really trying to discourage that. Others are still trying to, they kind of do a variety of things. Regarding end of the school year, I can get more information regarding that specifically and then bring that back at our next meeting.
Okay. I mean, I think it's going to be important because it's just, we don't want to drive kids to stay home on purpose knowing they can take exams or final exams because they have all their notes in front of them or their phones and everything else. On the other hand, we can't make them come to school because of that remote option. You know, so it's,
Come to school for the Regents, right? For Regents that are being offered. If they want to take it, they have to come to school. The AP exams are being offered virtually, and that has nothing to do with us.
Right, that's-
UHS, depending on the course,
Right.
will have to come.
So we're only talking about local exams, really, which it's up to the teacher and the department to determine whether they're going to do it or not do it.
sure.
And how you're assessing, I mean,
Right.
to the point we were making earlier, we want to know what gaps kids have, and we want to make sure that's, I keep using the word authentic, but we want to make sure it's authentic data so that we can fill gaps and all of that. So we've had conversations around, we may have to, we don't want to over-assess our kids either, but what does September look like? We want to give assessments now. Even kids who quote-unquote pass, we may need to do something else to see what foundational skills or what subsequent skills they may have missed, so that we can make sure that we do interventions and do it quick.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's any way you can give the same final exam you gave 2 years ago in June when kids were here every single day. You can't give that same exam this year.
And I will say
mean, the
that-
results are not going to be the
No.
same because, I mean, you just haven't had the time to teach them. I mean, we don't, it's not the same.
Many of our teachers are really thinking to their, creativity or thinking outside of the box.
Right.
With doing things like project-based learning, to do like more hands-on, even partner work, they're doing some of that as well because they know that the traditional assessment has to look, it can't look the same. It has to look different. So.
I'd appreciate that, because I think it's important for people to understand
Yeah.
that we've looked at it and that we've at least been able to report out that it's similar and that it's not different between the two.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. BOE committee reports. We have none. Policy adoption review, we have none. Hearings and petitions, do we have any for this one? None. Upcoming meetings, we will have a BOE meeting on June 16th. And we will also do retiree recognitions on the same night, correct?
Yeah, but it's just
And we will most likely be in
Just
the auditorium in this high school. We do not need to go into executive session, so do we need to go into executive session?
No, I was ready to adjourn.
No, that's tomorrow.
No, the other one.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
You could go back and then decide that you don't need to go back.
We can. As far as, tomorrow with Ryan,
Are we gonna do it after?
if we can, yeah.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.